Welcome, my PowerPoint about Starships. First off, we have Death Knight. The Death Knight Starship, it looks just kind of mid overall, I'm going to be honest with you. We can go through the cards, but like even going through them and like talking about things that you can do with them doesn't really make it seem much better. Let's start with Soulbound Spire. 3 mana 2/2 with Death Rattle, summon a minion with cost equal to this minion's attack up to 10 Starship piece. On its own, this is pretty bad. I mean, it's a 3 mana 2/2 that summons a 2-drop. I mean, it's like Piloted Shredder in current year. It's one mana cheaper, but understated, so it's not very good. Maybe if this started as a 3-drop, it would be more, or 3/3 would be more enticing. Genuinely, because it would leave behind a 3-drop, but on its own, it's just like not that great of tempo. You're supposed to combine it, of course, with Guiding Figure, which is the 2 mana 3/2 Starship piece. Spellburst trigger a random friendly minion's Death Rattle. So you're supposed to like combine it, but like it's not really easy to do that before they die, because that also just costs so much mana. Like even if you play it on curve, well, you're gonna be playing a Bloodfen Raptor into a 2/2 to get a 2-drop. Yeah, it's not that impressive, like at all. The thing is that like even if you are able to get a big starship, you have like all 4 pieces from Death Knight, and then you have the 2 neutral Death Rattle pieces, Arcanite Crystal. I don't remember what it's called. Arcanite Crystal Defense? Something like that. It's a 4 mana 3/4 with Death Rattle, gain 6 armor, taunt, and Starship piece. If you have all that together, it will be a 16 attack minion with, oh god, how much health? 8 plus, it would have 16 health. Oh, okay. So 16 attack, 16 health. And then you'll summon 10 drops, and like the average 10 drop is like okay, but like it's not easy to do. You'll gain a lot of armor because you'll have 2 Guiding Figures, which will spellburst twice on your Death Rattles to gain 6 armor. So you'll gain like 24 armor, I think, which is not the worst thing ever as well. It's pretty useful defensively, but it's just not that great. Like it's just a bunch of stats, and it's really susceptible to just being poofed like off the board. It isn't the worst though, because again, it is Death Rattle. So if your entire big board dies because like to not Reno, or I guess they don't silence it, then it leaves behind, you know, another board of 10 drops, and that can be pretty good. But I mean, it's still not the best. It's not even top 3 in my opinion. So that definitely leaves it as one of the worst of the 6, which is a little awkward. I just don't think it's very good. I really don't. The support card is Suffocate, which is a 4 mana shadow spell. Destroy a minion if you're building a starship. Also destroy a random neighbor, which is not very good. You would never play Assassinate, which is what Suffocate is. It is Assassinate, and then but it has a little upside if you are building a starship, which is like, eh. I mean, Assassinate's already a pretty terrible card. Any cards like Assassinate are already pretty bad. So I don't think Suffocate, you know, is that good of a card, even considering if you do play Starship. I think the Starship in Death Knight is just not worth playing. I really don't. Like, there's so many better things to be doing this expansion for Death Knight. I just don't see it. I really don't. I chose to include Yelling Yodeler on this slide because, well, it is really good with the Death Rattle, right? Because you can trigger the Death Rattle 4 times. Or, well, I guess 2 times, but if you have 2 Death Rattles on it 4 times. So you can summon like 4 10 drops on turn 5 or whatever, and that's not terrible. It really isn't terrible, but you'd rather just use Guiding Figure to trigger it, so it seems a little awkward, right? Because Yelling Yodeler is such a good card, but if you already have Guiding Figure built in, it's like, well, yikes, right? I don't know. I think the Death Knight one is kind of not that great. Then we have Demon Hunter. So the Demon Hunter Starship looks very aggressive. It's the pieces, of course, are, you know, relative. They're the same price, but they are aggressively oriented. They have like synergy, like better synergy with each other, honestly, than the Death Knight ones, by a pretty good amount. They have a lot of synergy with your really good cards that Demon Hunter already has access to, and then you have Warp Drive. I'm going to talk about Warp Drive first. It's a 3 mana Fel spell, draw 2 cards. If you're building a starship, they cost 2 less. This is probably the best payoff card for any of the starships, and that it really does carry the Demon Hunter Starship a big amount. It's 3 mana, draw 2, they cost 2 less. Like, what better is there to say about that? Your deck is going to have mostly cards that cost 3 or less in it, so this will be mostly you're drawing cards that cost 0. That's pretty good. You're only playing it in like a Pirate Demon Hunter kind of shell, using cards like Sigil of Skydiving, so you can summon a bunch of 1/1s with charge that you can then buff with Felfuse Battery, 2 mana 2/3. After this minion attacks, give your other minions +1 attack and Starship Piece. That alone isn't that impressive until you consider Shatter Shard Turret, 3 mana 2/4 Rush Wind Fury Starship Piece. So it's Crab Rider, but bigger, and it becomes Starship Piece. Pretty good. So if you have the bare minimum in your Starship of 2 pieces, it will be 5 mana to summon a 4/7 with Rush, Wind Fury, and then give your other pieces +1, or your other minions +1 attack per every time it attacks. That's the bare minimum. So that's nothing to scoff at, especially with, again, Sigil of Skydiving or Dangerous Cliffside, or just having minions on board. It seems pretty good, I'm going to be honest with you. I think this is probably the 3rd best one, which doesn't say that much, again, because I don't think the other, I think the 3 worst ones are, like, really unplayable, versus the 3 best ones seem like they will see play. I'm really looking forward to playing the Demon Hunter Starship. It looks really strong. Again, playing it with your Sigil Skydiving or Dangerous Cliffside is going to be insane. It just really is. Getting those 1/1s with charge, or your patches, of course, getting those 1/1s with charge is just going to matter a lot. It's going to push so much damage, and then, like, again, the minimum size that you're going to have on your Starship is a 4/7 with Rush, Wind Fury, and after it attacks, give your minions +1 attack for 5 mana. That's not including if you have another Shatter Shard Turret, which makes it like a 6/11, or another Felfuse Battery, which would make it a 6/10 that gives +2 attack every time it attacks, right? I don't think you would run Arcanite Defense Crystal. I think that's what it's called. In this deck, I think you would only run the 2 main Starship pieces, but I could be wrong. I probably am wrong. I also don't think you run the XR in a deck like this. I think it's one of the only decks that won't be running, like, more copies, just the ones that are based to the class, because, well, you're playing an aggro deck. You're trying to play low curve, and, like, they're just too expensive. They don't really fit with what you're going for, and I think this alone is just pretty good anyway. Then we have Druid. So Druid seems to be probably either the best or second best one for a lot of people. I'm still a little, like, not fully there. I think it's going to be good, but, like, it's hard to really quantify why. We start with Starlight Reactor. 3 mana 3/3. After you cast an arcane spell, recast it, target chosen randomly. So Vicious Syndicate is where I was seeing a lot of people, like them, they really think that this will be really good, and they seem to think that Starlight Reactor is just, like, absurd, and it is a good card. It is definitely a good card. It is really good in conjunction with Distress Signal, which is a 4 mana arcane spell. Summon 2 random 2-cost minions, fresh 2 mana crystals, which, if you play them together, it's 0 mana, summon 4 2-cost minions. That's pretty good. If you have 2 reactors, you'll actually go positive on mana. That's nothing to scoff at. I really think it's something to look for. You have Shatari Cloakfield, which is a 2 mana 1/3 elusive. Your first spell each turn costs 1 less Starship Piece. So you can just drop this on turn 2, play the 1 mana spell, which is like Arcanite Revelations or something. It's a 1 mana arcane spell. Draw a card. If it's a spell, it costs 1 less. So you just play these together on turn 2. It has elusive, so it's not too likely to die. So you can actually set it up pretty well, and it seems really good. Then, lastly, there's Exarch Othar. 4 mana 3/3 Draenei. Battlecry, if you're building a starship, get 3 different arcane spells and reduce their cost by 2. Of course, you're playing Othar if you're playing a Starship Druid. But random arcane spells seem relatively decent. I mean, Hunter still has, like, Celestial Shot. In Standard, there's the Sparkling File, which is a Druid spell, which benefits from spell damage. There's a lot of, like, decent arcane spells. There's a couple bad ones, I will say. There's a couple, but the pool overall is relatively decent. So I think that, like, they're not upset with even hitting the bad ones, especially when they do cost 2 less for Othar. But I'm not, like, it's hard to quantify what Druid's game plan is going to be. My idea is that you'll probably, like, pop your Starship, you'll be ahead on mana, so, like, maybe on turn 7, you'll have 9 full mana that you can play Distress Signal, you can get, you know, back to full mana, or, like, maybe not even full, but, like, it'll refresh most of your mana. Then you play the new 5 mana spell, which summons 2 3s with Taunt if there's no space. Give your minions +1/+1, so you'll have no space, and you'll then give your minions +1/+1. As many times as you have reactors, right? So if you have 3 reactors, you'll get +3/+3 to your whole board, and that's nothing to scoff at, right? You can just build a gigantic board with a lot of stats, and, like, your opponent has to deal with it, right? I think that's what the whole idea behind the Druid one is. It's just going to be a big stat board, but you're doing it a lot earlier in the game because you are Druid and you can ramp. So I think it is going to be pretty interesting, I'm going to be honest. Then we get to Hunter. So I think Hunter is either the best or the second best one as well, but I'm more inclined to lean towards Hunter because, well, I play more Hunter, so I can understand it a little easier. This one is really cut and dry. You start with Specimen Claw, 3 mana, 2/6. After your opponent plays a minion, attack it, Starship Piece. That's just fine, right? It's decent for fighting for board. It's a good body. It's just okay. Then you get Biopod, 2 mana, 2/2, Death Rattle, deal damage equal to this minion's attack to a random enemy Starship Piece. So if you play every copy of Specimen Claw, every copy of Biopod, that's 8 attack. If you play both copies of your Arcanite Defense Crystal, that's 14 attack, and that's not including if you get more copies of any of these cards, because you're going to play the Discover Hunter package in this deck, so you can easily get more copies. So if you get more Biopods, that's amazing, stuff like that. But if you have 14 attack, you'll have 2 Biopod Death Rattles, and then you can play Yelling Yodeler on it on turn 9 to trigger both Biopod Death Rattles twice. So for four instances of 14 damage, which is, what, 56 damage? And you'll gain 24 armor. That's pretty good. This is the first class that I will note its use cases with the Exodar. So the Exodar is a card we'll get to. It's 8 mana, 6/10, Battlecry, launch your Starship, and choose a protocol. I'm specifically only going to be talking about one of the protocols right now, and that is the one where you add all the Starship pieces back to your hand. Hunter is the best class at using that protocol. You will summon your Starship, and it will be all these stats, and it will fight for board because of Specimen Claw, and then when it dies, it will deal a lot of damage. And then what it does, the Exodar does, is it will give you all the Starship pieces back to your hand, and they cost 1. So if you understand where I'm going with this, you'll have launched your big Starship that can fight for board and soften up your opponent and soften up their board, and then you'll play all the Starship pieces out. They'll, again, fight for board, soften up your opponent's board, and then you can trigger the Starship again to get an additional Starship of the same size, and then Yelling Yodeler it to end the game. I think that this is the only one that you're likely to do that to at all, to pick that option. It's called, I think it's like the creation option. I don't know what the protocols are called, actually. I don't remember. But I think this is the only one where that is like a good choice. I don't think you run the Exodar in like Druid or Demon Hunter at all, right? But in Death Knight, it's similar, right? Death Knight, you can do the same thing to get just like a big fuck you board of stats, and I think it's probably pretty good. But I think the Death Knight one is bad, right? I think I like it, it's good at using the Exodar in that situation, but I think overall it's a bad Starship. Unlike Hunter, which seems really strong because it kills you. This is the first ever Hunter late game win condition, ever, literally ever. It's so unbelievably powerful, especially when you consider the fact that Hunter has the most value it's had since Deathstalker Rexar came out, also included in this expansion. This is easily Hunter's best expansion ever. I need people to realize that. Then lastly, you have Laser Barrage. 2 mana, deal 3 damage to a minion. If you're building a Starship, also damage its neighbors. I believe this is also, again, really strong. This is the best removal card in Hunter, bar none. Yeah, you can't play it on turn 2, which is a bit scuffed, but they nerfed pirates, so I don't really care that much anymore, I'm going to be honest with you. You're typically playing this on turn 3 at the earliest with Biopod, but more likely turn 4, because then you can also have Specimen Claw in there. I mean, 2 mana deal 3 is also just a playable card, right? It's not amazing, right? But you can still play it. It's just like pre-rework Dark Bomb, right? I guess Dark Bomb also went phase, actually. I think that Hunter has an amazing Starship. I think that you guys definitely should be looking forward to this one. Specimen Claw really enforces that idea. I'm sorry. Hiccups. Specimen Claw really enforces that idea of playing the Exodar just to summon your Starship and get more to get another Starship, just so you can fight for board. Because Specimen Claw will take your big ass Starship and let it fight for board, because it'll keep attacking any minion your enemy, I can't talk, I say that 10 times fast, summons. And it's so many stats, it's so much health. Another thing to note is that the Hunter Starship will have, if you max out all 6 pieces, I guess you could technically do all 8 pieces, but you don't want to run Dimensional Core. you have all 6 pieces, it gets 12 plus 4 plus 8 health, so 24 health, which I think is the most aside from Rogue potentially, which is 48 total health that you can heal off of the Exodar. I'm not gonna keep talking about the Exodar. It is a neutral card, and we'll get to it soon. Then there's Rogue. So Rogue only has 1 Starship piece built in, and that is the Gravitational Displacer, 5 mana 4/3 Starship piece. When this is launched, summon a copy of the Starship. You can get 2 really big Starships. This is accompanied by cards like Starship Schematics, 1 mana discover a Starship piece from another class, or Scourging Shipwright, 2 mana 3/2 Drain Eye, Death Rattle, get a Starship piece from another class. The whole idea is that you're supposed to get as many Starship pieces from other classes as possible, and build as big of a Starship as you can. However, you can't really control the pieces you get. I'd say almost no piece is bad for Rogue, though, aside from maybe one of the Warlock ones we'll get to. I mean, that one's just unbelievably terrible is the thing. It's just so awful. So terrible. But if you are able to get some of the better ones, like say you get the Guiding Figure and Biopod, you can get a huge Starship that does a lot of damage if you combine them together. You can also play like Tess to get all the Starship pieces back to build an even larger Starship. And that's why Rogue can have the biggest Starship by far, is because of cards like Tess and Maestra. So you can just build as big of a Starship as you possibly could ever dream of. And then it's just a lot of stats. It's so many stats. And if you have like Death Rattles on it, it's awkward to remove without just being poofed by Reno. I mean, obviously Reno hard counters most of the Starships. Not the Hunter one as much, because or like the Druid one, because those ones are like combo pieces. But most of the other ones get hard countered by Reno. I guess not Death Knight as well. Surprising, the best 3. Because that one is coming down so early, but yeah. Lastly, there's Barrel Roll. 3 mana, deal 5 damage to an undamaged character. Cost 1 if you're building Starship. This one's not that great. It's kind of like whatever. It's just like an okay, I guess, damage spell to a minion. Meh. It's just kind of meh. I think the Rogue one is probably the 4th best, but like with a pretty big gap between it and the Demon Hunter one. Yeah, you can get a crazy amount of stats out, but like, you're Rogue. You don't have survivability tools. What are you gonna do? Right? Like, you're also paying more mana than every other class to get your Starship online, because you have to place Shipwright and Schematic. Yeah, there's Rogue cards that can like reduce the cost, don't get me wrong, but I just don't see it. It just seems so much worse than the other ones. Maybe if like Shipwright was like a 1-drop and Displacer was like 4 mana, right? If you cut like a bunch of mana off of it, it would be a lot better, but it seems so mediocre. And then we have Warlock. So Warlock is by far the worst Starship. I mean, none of them come close to as bad as the Warlock is. Warlock is so bad that there's not even a 4th card I'm going to put on this slide that can synergize with it. I don't know what you're supposed to do with it. I really don't. You start with Fellfire Thrusters. 3 mana, 2/3. Spell Burst, deal this minion's attack damage to 2 enemy minions. This is unbelievably terrible. Maybe if this were a 3/3, it would be okay. Okay, right? But at 2/3, it's understated. The effect isn't even that strong. It's just so mid. But then you combine it with Heart of the Legion, which is a 2 mana 3/2 lifesteal Starship piece, which isn't the worst thing ever. You are pretty happy to get this off the Rogue Starship, because, well, a lot of the time Rogue doesn't have any healing, so this is pretty decent for the Rogue Starship. But the main like draw of playing the Starship in Warlock is Bad Omen. 6 mana Fell Spell, in 2 turns summon 2 6/6 demons with Taunt. If you're building a Starship, summon them now. So 6 mana 12 demons with Taunt. That's nothing to scoff at. That's actually a lot of stats. It's 4 stats than Airlock Breach, and Airlock Breach is a really good card. I mean, Airlock Breach also gives you plus 10 max health, but we're not going to talk about that. I think that like the Warlock Starship is just unbelievably bad. Like, just so bad. You're spending so much mana to build like a big roadblock of stats that like fights for board, but like against what? Hand buff Paladin? It's only good against like mid-range kind of decks, and those are very few and far between. It's not good into aggro because, well, it's ultra expensive and really slow. It's super slow in aggro. Like, yeah, if you can play Thruster, Heart of the Legion, and Arcanite Defense Crystal, and have all of them die, and be able to launch a Starship on turn 5, and not die, then it's probably okay, right? But who cares? That's not realistic. It's not realistic in the slightest. It's just so mediocre. I don't see this one doing anything at all. So the Starships I have determined have been broken up into a kind of few different things, right? The Druid and Hunter one are all about, winning the game. They win you the game when they are played. The Rogue and Death Knight one are all about generating just a fuck you amount of stats that you pray your opponent can't deal with or can't poof, right? The Demon Hunter one is about, supporting your aggressively playstyle oriented deck in Pirate Demon Hunter and other aggro Demon Hunters that we'll eventually get, hopefully. But more so that, right? But then the Warlock one is defensive. It doesn't even have taunt on its own. You have to play the neutral taunt card. It heals you and clears the board. It doesn't actually push your own game plan. It's just like, there's a reason that this one is the worst. It's the most susceptible to removal as well because it's so slow. It's just like, well, damn, right? Well, damn. It's just really bad. I don't know what more to say. It's just so terrible. Then we get to the neutral cards. So I've already talked about the Exodar a lot. It's 8 mana, 6/10, Battlecry. When you're building a Starship, launch it and choose a protocol. The first one is deal damage equal to the Starship to random enemies. That one's honestly the worst, in my opinion. It's probably good in select scenarios. Do not get me wrong. It probably is pretty decent sometimes. Because, well, sometimes you just need, like, 10 damage, right? The main draw of the Exodar is the fact that it just puts so many fucking stats in play. You can pick the second option, which is, of course, I've already talked about it, to get all the Starship pieces back, and they cost 1. So it's really good with the Death Rattle-based ones, because you want them to die, and then just build another one so you can Yell and Yodeler it. Especially Hunter. Then the last one is to gain armor equal to double the health of the Starship. So, again, Hunter benefits from that the most, because it has the most health on its Starship pieces, because of Specimen Claw being a 2/6. You can get, like, 48 health on a max-size Starship. That's a lot of armor. It really is a lot of armor to help you tank throughout the game. And, like, it's gonna matter, right? If there are combo decks that, like, don't run a lot of minions, you could pick that, and then you'll have your big Exodar on board that they can't really deal with. They can't block it, and then you've just gained a lot of armor in the late game, and it's like, well, I just win. I just win on board. And that's really, really strong and nothing to scoff at all. Like, at all, dude. Crystal Welder is a 2 mana 2/3 with taunt. Battlecry, if you're building a Starship, gain +2/+2. So it's every turn, like past like turn 2 or 3, it's going to be a 2 mana 4/5 with taunt, and that's really good. That's really good. It's going to see a lot of play in a lot of decks. You probably don't run this in like Demon Hunter specifically, but I think every other class wants to run this. Demon Hunter is like, you're only running like the specifically good pieces in Demon Hunter. I'm going to be honest with you, because the rest don't really synergize with the hyper aggro playstyle. That one wants you to, but that one also wants to be the smallest one anyway, so it kind of makes sense. Crystal Welder is just a nuts card. I don't see a world where you don't play this in like every deck that wants to be playing a Starship. Even Druid, I think Druid wants to run this. It's just so many stats. It's just really good. Then there's Arcanite Defense Crystal, which is a 4 mana 3/4 taunt, Death Rattle, gain 6 armor, Starship piece. I've already talked about this one a lot. The taunt is what you need for Warlock to work. The taunt and Death Rattle are really good on the Hunter and Demon Hunter, or not Demon Hunter, sorry, Death Knight ones. I keep mixing up Demon Hunter and Death Knight lately. The Death Knight and Hunter ones have Death Rattle synergy, so it's really good there. The Druid probably doesn't run this, and Rogue runs this because they just want as many pieces as possible, right? And then lastly, Dimensional Core, 3 mana 3/2 Divine Shield Starship piece. This is the worst Starship piece by far, even worse than the Warlock one. This is Dark Moon Dirigible without its corrupt effect, and that card was unplayable. Maybe if they buff this to 2 mana, it's pretty good, but a 2 mana 3/2 with Divine Shield is already a pretty good minion, so I think this would see play at 2 mana. I'm not sure why they did this. Even the devs aren't running this in their 3D decks, which is crazy. It's just really bad. It's just so much worse than every other Starship piece by a significant amount. And that really holds back the entire archetype because, well, if you're only running 6 out of a total of 8 pieces because one of the pieces is so bad, damn, right? Like, damn. But yeah, that's gonna be it from me. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you think down below. Which starship do you think is the most interesting? I'm definitely going to be playing Starship Hunter. After, like, I kept saying I didn't want to be playing Hunter first, but after playing other stuff in the Brawl, I'm just like, dude, it's just going to be Hunter all the way. I couldn't play any Hunter decks at all during the Brawl. I didn't pull any Legendaries. I didn't pull any Epics for this entire set, so I couldn't play any Hunter decks, and I didn't want to play other decks, so I played Meteor Shaman, I played Asteroid Shaman, and that was it. Like, it was fun. I stopped playing it, and that was it. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this expansion. It's coming out in a few hours after the time of this being posted, so yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I don't know if I said that.
Shadows are rising again!
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tomb. They grab their whips and fedoras. These legends are the